Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug Show. Today, I'm pumped to bring a guest back on the show. It's been far too long. My buddy Kyle Roof is going to talk to us about EEAT and a few other things. You probably know Kyle because you've seen him around at a SEO conference or something like that. And he has several SEO and online businesses, from Page Optimizer Pro, which is an on-page SEO tool, to training over at Internet Marketing Gold, or his work over at High Voltage SEO, his agency. He's been a speaker many times, an attendee of these SEO conferences and other online marketing conferences around the world, and he's dedicated nearly a decade of his life to SEO testing. He's published the results of more than 400 scientific tests that he's conducted. So he really got obsessed at some point in time, and I think we spent a lot of time on that on the other interview, which we'll link up to. But today we are going to focus on a couple different areas. Before we get into it, we'll hear a little bit about Kyle's background straight from him. So Kyle, how's it going today?
I'm doing great. Doing really good. How are you, man?
Doing good. And it's one of those where we're across the world. So it's early morning for me, kind of late night for you. So appreciate you carving out the time. Now, yeah, what's your story? How'd you get involved in SEO? And you could do the truncated version, of course.
The super short version is I was a lawyer. I was a trial attorney. I hated it with a passion. So I did what everybody does when they hate their job, and I went to South Korea and taught English. It's an A to B move. And then while there, I started a company, and that company needed a website, and I started the website, and then I had this really good group of devs, and I thought maybe I could just general contract websites. And that's what I did. And then a lot of twists and turns later, I got into the marketing of the websites as kind of like as a bolt-on to the development of the websites, and realized that it's a lot better to be on the marketing side, as I think building a website is a rat's nest.
Right.
I almost started to hate it as much as I hated law. And then and the SEO part I was actually pretty good at. And now we're here today.
What year did you shift to the SEO portion where you realized, hey, this is my thing?
It was a quick shift. I think I started, it was right around the beginning of 2012, I feel like, 2011, 2012, when I was doing the websites. And then mid to end of 2012 is when I started really focusing primarily on the SEO side of things.
Got it. Okay. So we'll link up to the other interview where we talk about some more about your background, and you have a lot of content online. So if people want to stalk you, they could go.
Some might say too much, Doug.
Yeah.
Some might say too much.
There's plenty out there. Okay. So before we get into the EEAT stuff, there's a couple topics that I want to cover. So you have done a bunch of tests over the years, and you still actively run tests. So you have a couple recent ones that were kind of surprising. In fact, when you told me about them, I thought these were things that we were arguing about a decade ago, and it was sort of inconclusive. So what are these recent tests?
Did a couple fun ones, and we run all these through IMG, by the way. And so that's where the write-ups are and all that. But the first one was with no follow links. And I did this test in conjunction with a guy named Chris Pentelli, and he is from Linkify, is his company. But a lot of what he does is our Haro links, so help a reporter out. And a lot of those are on great publications, but they're no follows. And so I think the impetus for the test for him was that a lot of people giving blowback on that like, well, I mean, yeah, it's a nice publication, but it's a no follow link. Is it worth anything? And years and years and years and years ago, I tested with no follow links, and they totally passed juice, and it was fine. What was interesting, kind of as you look at the history of no follow, of course, the talking heads always say that it doesn't pass any juice. And I think that's based on Google kind of saying that, which is always a reliable source. But then in like 2020, I think Google changed their stance a little bit, and they said that a no following could be a hint. And then they just kind of left whatever hint might be, and I think people just ran with that. But what I think they implied was that it could be used for indexing purposes. Essentially, that pages might index if they are getting linked to from a no follow source. But the biggest thing that I've always thought about is no follow has nothing to do with the website that you're sending to. It has to do with the website that you're on. It's protecting the webmaster, saying that I don't really know where this is going. I don't take credit or responsibility for this link. I think it could be helpful, but I'm not going to say that I'm vouching for that site. Is essentially what the no follow is. But it's protection for the site. It has nothing really to do with the site that it's going to. And also, Google is free to do whatever Google wants. So I had been testing this in the last little bit, and with test sites, so sites that are not getting any traffic or anything like that, and the no-follow links really weren't doing too much, nothing at all. Then with Chris, what we did was we ran a test with putting a no-follow link on a page that was getting pretty healthy traffic. This page was getting about 1,000 visitors a month, not all organic, but in total, about 1,000 visitors a month, and just it instantly passed juice. Absolutely instantly moved the needle. And so what I'm advising people is on the no follow side of things that they're definitely passing juice, but I think you want to make sure it's coming from a healthy page, a page that Google is crawling and working with and is happy with. And I think then, like, so for example, those horror links on really good publications, I think are a good thing to do.
So when you say it moved the needle right away, can you share, do you happen to remember any of the specific results to give
people?
We
had a set of test pages. Yeah, we had a set of test pages, and we fired it at the number 3 ranking for a term, and it moved right to number 1 within 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
Which is
pretty clear.
rather quick. And it's only 24 hours because I think I went to sleep. It was probably well before that.
Wow.
It was almost
amazing.
Just right after Google crawled. So we have the cache date on when Google crawled the page, and within 24 hours, it had moved the test page up to number 1.
Yeah, and that makes sense for Chris to have, the vested interest to help run such a test. I interviewed him a few weeks ago and got a couple really awesome links from Linkify. Yeah. Cool. So what's the other test?
That's great. The other test was the one that, they always say that Google ads don't do anything for your SEO, right? Often, though, when people say they'll hedge the statement by saying, well, it could raise your brand awareness, and if more people are searching for your brand, that could help your SEO. I was like, all right, whatever. So I subscribe to avalanche theory. I teach it a lot. And actually, I teach it in conjunction with KGR, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
And and I give you credit every time. The thing that we had was, so we got these pages that aren't doing anything. I would call them stuck. They're not ranking for their target keyword. They're not getting clicks. They're not getting impressions. They're just there, and they're not really doing anything. And I thought it'd be fun. We've got 10 of these that are just zeros across the board. Why don't we run ads to them? So what we did is we ran one ad for one page, and it was a $20 a day budget, and we ran it for 2 weeks. And almost instantly on day 1, after putting the ads up, all the pages took off. And not just took off, not just like, okay, they're ranking for one term. Now they're ranking for like 50 terms, 25 terms, 75 terms, and getting all kinds of impressions within that first week. And for the second week, it didn't improve anything, but it also didn't really drop. There was like a slight drop in maybe ranking keywords and impressions, but maintained. The thing we can say for sure, probably, I think we can say very confidently, is that this is going to help with indexing. Essentially, Google will find these pages this way. But I have never seen a page index and then blow up like that within one day. Where it's like not just found, but like within one day. And the charts that we have from Search Console are just this like straight line up on impressions that you're getting because they're instantly ranking for all of these keywords that are around the topic for the page. Absolutely incredible. And the thing that always gets me, like if you're a search right now, if I run Google ads, will that help my SEO? You're gonna get a lot of no's, all the major publications of no, like definitely false, not true, kind of like, meters on all their pages. And never once on any of those things do they say like, well, we tried it. It's the easiest test you could try. You could do it, and we could maybe find out like maybe it won't work in certain situations. Then we know not to do it in those situations. If you find like some no's, but never once in any of those things, do you ever see somebody say like, well, I gave it a go and this is what I found. And I found it not to be true. It's always just like, that feels wrong. It feels like this. Google said that. And that's it. It's always just this like feely kind of stuff, but nobody's actually ever, I feel like, doing SEO and just showing what they're doing.
Right. Now, we're going to spend some time on that topic too, because I'm one of those talking heads, right? So, like, I'll accept some of the
I'm coming at you. I'm coming after you.
So, with this specific test, what happened when you stopped running the ads?
They're still going. They're still alive.
Okay.
They're still up. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be the other thing that would be interesting. Like, hey, can you turn it on?
But when they just turn it off and they tank.
Yeah, or do you get some like lasting benefit and maybe I don't know, there's momentum.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was more like a link echo, where you've got the benefit from the link for another 6 to 8 months or something like that. I could totally see that.
Okay, cool. And one quick clarification, IMG is Internet Marketing Gold. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but these kind of tests, those are published inside like the forum area of Internet Marketing Gold, right?
That's right. The majority of the thing is just courses to learn SEO, but then part of what we do is also run tests on the algorithm.
Okay. So courses, community, and there's a forum. All right. Perfect.
That's right.
Great. And yes, it's very interesting with, like you mentioned, if people search for something, they'll find a bunch of information about SEO questions and answers, but almost no one has actually tried it. So what do you think is going on there? Is it just laziness where people are regurgitating the same stuff based on keywords or something, or just...
Well, I know you've run tests and case studies and stuff like that. They're not fun. Like it takes a lot of work. They're really not the easiest thing to do. And so to sit down and actually do it is one thing. I think that's a big barrier to entry. Another barrier to entry, though, is I think a lack of creativity, where it's hard to actually figure out how to test something sometimes. Where I saw this technique and I'd like to try it, but you really need to try to boil it down to as few things as possible to really see if you're testing something or if you can say like something is or is not. And I think creativity is also a bar to entry in figuring out how you can actually put something together that would then demonstrate whether something, is or is not true.
And it's important from a scientific testing standpoint to test the inverse, right? To test the negative test to make sure that it's actually correct, right?
That's one of the biggest things. That actually fast tracks certainty. If you test it one way, you could test something 5 times. And if you got 5 results, the probability on that is like, that it's not true is you're at like 94% probability. 95% is statistical significance in science. So 5 times in a row would do it. But for our purposes, I think the inverse does the same thing, even better. So that if you see a positive and then you run the test in the inverse and then you get the negative, I think that shows you that is a thing.
And it's to the point, like running tests like you talk about, almost no one will do it. And if you just have like an N of 1 where you have like a case study that you did once, that's good enough where you could probably like guest post or share your story on podcasts or whatever, because there's so few instances where someone shares the results.
Oh, big time. I mean, that launches you. I think you just need one decent one and to show something that you figured out. And yeah, you've got talking points for 1.5 years, 2 years. I'm still making money off of rhinoplasty Plano. That was
it's crazy.
I've got Lorem Ipsum on my arm.
Yeah, that's real. I didn't know you had that tattoo. That's cool though. Yeah, we were showing tattoos before. We can't show them all, everybody, but yeah, find Kyle at a conference sometime.
We were both shirtless though. Let's be honest.
Okay, this is great. Let's shift into EEAT for the uninitiated. Can you just explain sort of the broad points of EEAT, and then we'll get into some details?
Yeah. So experience, expertise, authoritativeness, trustworthiness is what we're talking about. Really, the central question is: should this website be in the index in the first place? I think is really what those things boil down to. Google has a vested interest in making sure that there are reputable sites in its index. And I have a feeling while things started with YMYL, your money or your life, like financial sites and health sites, I think it's pretty much expanded to just about every other site. And it's based on probably a traffic bar. Once your site is getting a certain amount of traffic, Google will probably check it to see if it's worthwhile. And this makes a lot of sense. Like if somebody buys something from you or they follow your advice and they're harmed, they need to be able to figure out who you are so they can get their money back. They can get a refund. They can get a new product, a replacement, or something else. Or in very bad situations, they can figure out who they need to sue. But if that person is hiding themselves on the web, then what's the consumer to do in those situations? And I can see why Google would say, like, well, we really don't want those types of people on the internet, or at least in our index. We want companies that will take ownership. They'll take ownership, like, we are responsible for this website, and we are responsible for this content that is on this site. And so that's what I think all of it kind of boils down to in EAT is, are you a real thing that people can find? And if they have problems with advice you gave or a product that you sold, that they can come back and have a word, and figure out where you are. And so that's kind of the crux of it. A lot of people will say that Google's going after affiliate sites. And I think that's only true because affiliate sites like to hide who they are. And that is problematic, just from a standpoint of what I think Google is trying to do to protect the consumer. And so the idea is you want to make yourself as real as possible. Make sure that you're an entity that can be discovered. And the more you do of that, the more EAT signals I think you're giving, and the less chance you have of getting hit by an EAT update or an EAT check.
You mentioned something about people actually reviewing the website. So there's a long document, the reviewer guidelines, which is kind of the backbone of what we're talking about. So people could go find that, read the whole thing, and see what we're talking about a little bit more detailed. But you also mentioned you thought it's like a traffic threshold. Is that confirmed anywhere? Is that a pretty widely held theory?
The place that I've seen a lot of this talked about is from FatRank, if you're familiar with them. It's James Dooley and his team. And what they identified, so to clarify, they're in all the naughty niches. They're in all the YMYLs. Like, they're in all the things that actually EAT is probably trying to go after. And across their 600 plus websites, what they started to identify was in referrer traffic, there's this thing called Rater Hub. And what they found is that sites that got hit had Rater Hub visit their site out of the blue about 2 weeks to 4 weeks before. And so what they've identified, or what their belief is that if you see Rater Hub in Google Analytics in your referral traffic, there's a decent chance that Google has come and taken a look. Now, I don't think an actual human would be coming to take a look. I think that's the bot. What the Rater guidelines and the human part is kind of a backwards check. Did we do this right? Okay, check out the SERP, look at these results. Are these results actually matching what we're trying to do? So in these situations, I don't think a human is coming, a bot is coming. And so you need to, as you're putting out these signals that kind of match up with those guidelines, it needs to be not clear to a human, but clear to a bot what these things are. So it has to be really, really obvious that a bot can find those signals to see that you are a real thing.
Okay. Which we'll come back around to in a couple minutes. Okay. So how long has Google been doing EAT, sort of emphasizing EAT?
When was the first Medic update? Was that like 2019? 2018? Has it been that long?
Yeah, I was going to say it all blurs together.
I think we had something in the middle. Something happened in 2020, and it kind of
yeah, messed everything.
I feel like it was 2018, 2019, okay. Somewhere in there. All pre-COVID.
Right. That sounds right. And yeah, pre-COVID, that's what we can talk about specifically. Now, they added experience in the last year.
Yeah, the most recent one. That's right, this year.
What is that about?
So expertise is like your degrees, and experience is your time, is how they define it. Now, the tricky part to both of those is Google is also not in the value judgment game. They don't, and everybody knows this. As soon as they've launched something and they're like, hey, when I search for my keyword, there are 2 sites on page 1 and they don't even sell it. Like they don't have the product. And they'd be like, my article is objectively better than that article. Google's not making a value judgment that, oh yeah, I read this and I'm a better algorithm for having read this. It's not saying like this is better than that. So experience and expertise are tricky ones in terms of what a bot is going to look at, because a bot isn't going to make a value judgment. What's better, a degree from Harvard or a degree from Stanford? I don't know. Well, or Cambridge, or what's better? Somebody's got 25 years in the field, but no degrees and they have a high school GED. Who knows what's better? And they don't want to make that judgment call. But what I think both of those things come down to is a real person writing this, is a real person saying these things. And so what I would focus on to cover those things, especially with experience as the new one, can you demonstrate that a human wrote this stuff? So as many of those signals as you can get out, I think are important.
Okay. So is Google using EAT as a direct ranking factor, or is it just kind of on the back end to verify?
It's on the back end. I've had a few people say hey, I did all that EAT stuff you talked about. My ranking didn't go up. It's not gonna. None of those are factors necessarily that are going to move your rank up. It's you're going to keep rank that you've established once Google does come and do that check. That's what is happening there. So it's to maintain your on the back end, or on a weird way, it could be a ranking factor because somebody else dropped and you went up because they didn't have it and got tagged. It's kind of you could look at it that way if you'd like, but it's not going to be a direct I did this and my ranking went up sort of a situation.
Got it. So it'll be potentially a secondary factor through hurting an opponent or something. Okay. And
the other thing too, though, is if somebody's thinking this is nonsense, fine. It's your website. And to be perfectly honest, I don't really worry about anybody else's website. But all of these things to take care of are like a half day's worth of work, and if your risk tolerance is anywhere you might want to avoid any kind of risk, it's a half day's worth of work. And on top of that, all these things are trust signals that somebody's going to want. If you're trying to sell something on your site, you probably want a lot of these signals on there. So somebody says I will give you my credit card now in order to make the sale. So I think at a minimum, it's going to help you with those types of situations at a minimum to do. And they're not expensive. They're not hard to do, and they're things you probably should be doing anyway. All right. You should be a business. If you're taking money, you probably should be a business.
So perfect segue. Let's get into the nuts and bolts and some actionable things. So what should people be doing? And like you said, each one is, maybe half a day. It's fairly straightforward. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So I think you could think about it if you were an actual brick and mortar business, what would you be able to do? And the joke that I have with some of my friends is real companies don't have EAT issues, really. I mean, if they're a real company, they have no problem putting their address on the page. They have no problem with multiple emails going to different departments. They have no problem putting a local phone number on there. Those are kind of some signals. These are things that that you should have on your site. You should have, about the company page that talks about the history of the organization. You have a page with organization schema. You should have a page about the humans that work at this company, about the team. You should have author bio pages on the people that are writing this kind of stuff. Those are all really straightforward and simple. And I think if you hit all of those, I think you really take care of a lot of your EAT issues right there. On the website side of things, is this a real website? Do you have a privacy policy page? Do you have a refunds page? Do you have a complaints page? Do you have a contact us for this issue page? Do you have terms of service? Do you have a current copyright? And the other thing too, it's not just one thing hey, I had a current copyright and I got hit. It's not one thing. It's probably they're looking at 500 things and you need to tick a certain number of those boxes to get as many of those signals as you can out there for the bot to find is really the goal.
Got it. And yeah, for some of these, a quick example. So Niche Site Project is my blog, right? I don't have an address or phone number listed, but I have many of the other things. So like you said, you kind of need to tick a certain number of them maybe and be mostly on the right side of this judgment. But yeah, for my blog where I don't necessarily want to put a specific address, what do you recommend? Should I put the business address that I use, even though I don't want to receive mail there or a lawsuit or whatever?
That's what I would do. If you have a registered agent, which most people do, I would put,
right.
That's what I do is I put my registered agent's address on there just so there is an address. Because it is true, that's where the business is registered.
Sure.
And that's how I handle it. I would say also in your situation though, how your site's old, you've been around. I think there's also an age factor to it where, you got a site that's, I don't know how old your site is, but you've been around a long time. I imagine it's got some age to it. That's going to be a factor. But one other thing is links are going to be a factor in this as well. And where I think that factor comes in is probably citations, or that your business is in directories that say like this is a real thing and it matches other things that you have on your site. That this information is starting to match up to show that you're a real entity. And I'm sure even by default, once you have an older website, you have a lot of that going on.
Got it. So how important are links? I have often, normally like without testing, I've said, I think most of the EAT factors that like we need to care about, it's probably like from links, aside from like having a good about page and the other shit kind of organized on your site. But if you have a ton of links, you're probably all right.
I don't think it's necessarily having a ton of links, and because which ones? But I do think it's citations. It's those types of profile links, directory links that match your information up. Google's crawling it and seeing enough signals like, okay, I see this company is listed this way, or this site is listed this way again and again and again in sources that it trusts. And that's going to be the citation type links. That's where I would focus on. If you're like, we haven't really done any of those, I would jump on. They're cheap. They're easy. Again, that's half a day's worth of work. And in addition with all the other stuff too, to get it out there. So you can really bang all this out quickly. And it's only good for your site to do it anyway.
What is like how does someone know that they have an issue with EAT? Like, does their site drop in rankings? Is there some precipitating event where they will know?
So it's a fall off the cliff. It's like a link penalty. It's not like a content penalty that's like slow death line that you see. It's a link. It looks like a link penalty, or like a technical issue. It's just that straight drop. It's a pretty fast drop. It might level for a minute and then drop some more. It's like, okay, I think we're okay. Let's catch our breath, and then you see it just go down again. So it's a pretty dramatic drop.
Okay, and you don't get a warning or anything. Just it looks like something bad has happened.
And there's no manual part of this either. So it is completely algorithmic, which tells me that it's not a human looking at this, because they don't say, oh, your EAT stuff, manual penalty, EAT problems. It's just you fell off a cliff.
And how long does it take to recover after you fix it up?
That's a great question. So it probably has to do with some sort of core update or some other time where they're going to come back and check, and it's not tomorrow. It is a certain amount of time. I think it can be a very long time. But we've had sites that we've recovered 6 months. We've had sites that are a year and some change out and have not recovered. So, I don't know that anybody has a great number on when that is, but they can recover. They can come back. And I don't know precisely what that trigger is. Maybe a certain number of core updates, or some sort of like they come back and check at a certain amount of time. I don't really know on that.
Oh man, that's tough. That's tough. And it's almost impossible to test that, right? Because you have to have a real live site to do.
And then at the same time, of course, when you're doing this too, you find 30 other things that could be problems. And so of course you're going to fix them all. And then, so you can't really, because you can't tell like a business owner, like, hey, do you mind if we just change like 2 things and see if it comes back? And then we know. It doesn't really work that way.
Man. So it seems like people should, when they start their site, they should think about this and do everything right at the very beginning to avoid problems in the future. Anything to add on to that maybe is just an obvious statement?
No, really. I mean, it is an obvious statement. And for some reason, so many people ignore it. It's shocking to me, actually. Just do the things that a business would do, because you should be a business. Do those things. Yeah, they're a pain. It's a pain to go register this, and it's a pain to go do that. But really, at the end of the day, it's not that bad. And right. It's something that you should have done anyway if you haven't. And most people have. They just, for whatever reason, don't make themselves look real online. And I think that's problematic.
And quick point, I actually have an address that I could put on the website, but I was like, what the fuck? I'm not going to put I'm not going to put the address on my website. But yeah, I literally have an address, just like you said. I mean, it's not like my home address or anything like that. So it's not a risky thing for me to do.
To that point though, I think you do want to make sure you've got it in Schema somewhere. Just having it like in words, because we've been playing with AI tools like, hey, is there an address on this page? Or is there an address in this content? And doing it in like different formats, USA, UK, France, that kind of thing. And AI can find it like 70% of the time. It can say like, yeah, there is an address on here, but that means they're missing it 30% of the time. You got to figure like Google probably is somewhere in that neighborhood too. So the easiest, you want to make it as easy as possible for bots to find this stuff. And in the schema, in the metadata and in schema as much as you can for these signals, I think you really want to do.
Okay. Got it. All right. I'll do that after we finish up here.
Immediately just.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say someone has started a website and they're actually interested in it, but they're not an expert. They don't have the authority. They don't have a degree in it. And I'll make up some example. Maybe they're into photography. And so they start a photography website, but they actually don't have the credentials and experience to qualify for EAT. What are some things that they could do to fit that mark?
Sure. Two things. One is topical authority. So the idea is that, are you the go-to website? Are you the website that people can go to get the answer? And really what that means is topical authority. Are you answering all the questions? Are you covering all the topics? And so you don't have to be an expert. It's that your website is answering all the questions, I think, is a big part of that. So topical authority is a huge part of this. And that's something that you should focus on, and that's something you should do. And it doesn't matter if you've got 1 day experience or 20 years worth of experience. The other thing that shows, I think, a strong signal is UGC, user-generated content. And the big thing is if somebody is an expert, or if people like the content and they're engaging with it, they're asking questions. You know, they're posting like, hey, what about this? Or I've got this situation. Or what do you think about this? Because that's what they do with experts. I'm sure you get plenty of those questions all the time. I get a lot of them. And it's because people respect your opinion, right? They are saying, hey, I think I would like to know what this person has to say because I think they know what they're talking about. And so while I wouldn't just turn on comments willy-nilly, but I would make things open to comments, because as people put comments, I think it does send a signal that that you are that authority, or that your website's that authority, because it's the go-to place to get an answer.
Okay. I'm just thinking, like, could you, don't do this, everyone, but could you fake it and, like, you know, make it look like there's more community there, right?
That's the bottom line. All of this is fakeable. But you know what? If you took the time to fake it, you probably could have done it in the real way too.
Right.
That seems what it almost always comes down to. But yeah, I do not believe that putting fake comments on your website to satisfy any kind of EAT signal is a good idea. Just in case anybody's listening.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
It's not legal advice. It's just entertainment here, right? So, okay. So
past results are not indicative of future performance.
Yeah. All entertainment is supposed to be. Okay. So one thought that I've had, and I've mentioned this, is like a way that people could show like expertise on the site. For example, I like podcasting and I like to interview experts like you. So let's say I start interviewing a bunch of photographers and other people in the industry, and I have, you know, their credentials are listed on the website as, you know, someone that I featured or interviewed or whatever, and then slowly build expertise and really topical authority based on other people's expertise and experience and all that stuff. So any thoughts on that approach where you're borrowing from others?
I love it. Yeah, okay. For sure. And then I've heard some people speculate too that something else you can do, like let's say you've got products and you've got like product reviews, maybe like fitting in things like I did this, or we did this, or we checked out that, and we looked at this, those kind of terms, to kind of show more of a personal experience with the product. You actually have experience with it, that you've handled it and played with it. That's just speculation. But if you're like grasping at things that I can't do any of that, but maybe this is one thing you could do, maybe that'd be something else to look into.
What about images and video on that note?
Yeah, like in the testing that I've done, a stock photo will definitely help index a page faster. And I think that comes down to, that's a known quantity to Google. So if you're selling purple widgets and you have a purple widget stock photo, I think that actually makes it really easy for the bot to understand what that page is about, and you get that page to index faster. But then after that, it does feel like, and it's really hard to nail this down, but that a unique image after that seems to do pretty well. You know, in that in that kind of like the next crawl or the next kind of run through, like that stock photo for the indexing, but the unique photo for ranking purposes.
Okay. And now we have AI image generators. So do you have any experience with those where, I mean, you could create a unique image, even though it could be a little goofed up? I've played around with it a little bit, and I was like, oh, I want to see like this kind of a guitar with this kind of finish and this kind of lighting. And there were extra knobs and a lot of extra things on the guitar that made it
Extra
clearly
fingers.
fake.
Came with fingers.
Yeah, it's like 11 fingers on one hand. It's crazy stuff. But Google would see that as a unique image, right? Like they're not counting fingers on the guitar, I don't think.
So I haven't looked too much at that, but I have looked at like this person isn't real. You've seen that where you can create an image of a fake person. That's been around for a while.
Yeah.
But I have seen that any image detectors can see all that as fake. They immediately flag all those as fake, and the free ones too. Like not even like I'm paying for an image detector. I'm just running it through. Just is this a real image kind of thing, and they all ping as fake. So I haven't played with the Midjourney stuff or any of those AI, but I have a feeling that it might be pretty easy to determine they're actually not real. Could be better now, but I know that the this person's not real. Those get flagged immediately.
Interesting. Okay. So maybe those don't fit the bill. Although, from some perspectives, I could see having AI images as, something that adds value for the website. So I don't necessarily see it as an issue, but maybe it doesn't meet the EAT criteria.
Right. Exactly right.
All right. So we've talked mostly about things that could be pretty easily faked because, you can write a really good about page, have bios that are maybe you took some liberties with all the facts there, but are there any technical factors that come into play for EAT where, you really can't fake like page speed, right?
So I'm not entirely sure how much those factor into anything anyway. The test that I always like for page speed is ask your Nana to open it up, and if she's like, pretty good, then I think you're fine.
Okay.
If Nana will stay for the page to open, I think that's all you need to worry about. The only technical stuff that really kind of gives people shivers is schema. Like that's always been everybody's issue, and so maybe you need somebody to help you with that. I don't do schema well at all. I'm not gonna lie. I pay people to do it. But I would just make sure that you get as much in there as possible so that you make it as easy as possible for the bot. That's all I would really focus on.
All right. Are there any, like the top 20% of the schema? You mentioned the address, any other things?
Organization schemas so that you can identify what kind of entity this is. On author bio pages, I would have person schema. And then on articles that they've written for you in the article schema, I would reference the bio page in the schema. So you've got that author link in the schema, and I would go to the page on my site and that I've written about them. And on that page, I've got person schema. So you're kind of linking them together, like this real person that I'm talking about wrote this thing, and here's more information about them on my site.
In the nuts and bolts of schema for people that don't know, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle. Actually, I'll ask it as a question. That way I'm not making any statements here. But I'm even worse at it than you are. But these are just tags in the code that provide a little more information to whatever's crawling the page. Is that right?
That's exactly right. All the search engines got together and agreed that said, we will understand what this thing is if you write it in this way in the code. And so it's kind of like an identifier tag. If, like, say on a page you see a dollar sign and you see $9.99, you as a human know that's a price. That's $9.99. A search engine doesn't necessarily know that. They don't know that could be a price. That's just numbers and a symbol. So what you say is, if you identify in the schema this is a price, then they know, oh, okay, I know this is a price. So it's something that tags items so that search engines are very clear about what this information is.
Are there any specific misconceptions or myths around EAT? And you kind of covered some, but if you want to wrap it in a bow and say, hey, here are the top 3 things that people get, wrong about it.
Still, the vast majority of people don't worry about it until it's way too late. I mean, way too late. I think that's number one. A lot of people scoff, shrug their shoulders, roll it off. I've got a site that's doing this, that, or the other. Good for you. Good for you. Go for it. Do what you want to do with your site. I think that's the biggest one. People thinking that you need a doctor to write your stuff or a PhD, and you simply do not, because Google, like I said before, Google's not going to make a value judgment as to who is actually better. That's not part of a ranking factor. I think it just really comes down to our humans writing this. Maybe there's an exception if you had a website about open heart surgery, but I don't know how many of those are out there, to be honest. And I don't know who's monetizing that. Yeah. So, in that situation, sure, get a doctor. But in just about any other website, I think you're okay. That might be another huge misconception. And then, in the most recent guidelines, they did come out and say that trust is the most important factor, that it doesn't matter how good your experience or your expertise or your authoritativeness is if you miss the trust stuff. And I think the trust stuff comes down to being real. That's where, are you a real thing? And are you taking responsibility for this site and this content? And so that makes those things mission critical. And thankfully, those are, I think, the easiest things to do. Those are the things that, should be pretty basic and pretty easy to do.
One thing you said before, I'm going to have to shut down my DIY heart surgery site now. I think that's probably it's not going to take off like I thought. No.
The keywords were so easy to win.
Yeah. It seemed like a high dollar market, but okay. So on the trust side, I'm curious if you think, I'm just going to use my stuff as an example. So I have my website. I haven't done everything quite right, like we've talked about. I also have a podcast where there's hundreds of episodes. And then I have a YouTube channel where there's thousands of videos. Many of these are linked together, back and forth, not in any kind of, specific way, because I just miss stuff occasionally. But there's a lot of, trust because of the two audio and video formats there. Do you think that comes into play? Like, does that mapping come out and it's like, wow, there's a lot of trust here. There's videos, there's comments on the videos and all that kind of stuff.
I would lean towards yes. I mean, you've got all that content out there that is constantly saying your brand name, your personal brand, your company brand, and all that's linking together. I could definitely see that, and that's maybe where the time factor comes in. It might not be time. It's just sites that are that old or that you've been around for so long. I mean, you are really, really old. You've been around that long. You just accumulate all that stuff naturally, right? That's just, so that could be, it's not necessarily time, but just the natural stuff that happens that indicates that, hey, you're a real person. This is a real website. This is a real YouTube channel. I can see all that kind of being in play for sure.
Okay. Very good. Well, and this actually cleared up a lot of misconceptions on my side too, because like you said, I've largely ignored it. And I'm like, if you could fake all of this stuff, then, either just fake it or like, don't worry about it because Google probably is not doing too much. And I'm like, no one's manually reviewing your website. Like there's too many websites. Right. It would take too much time. So all the things that we've covered, it makes total sense. And it would weed out a decent number of people because people are lazy and they just don't do the little things.
Yeah, that's what it comes. People don't grind. The people that make money online and in like our industry are the ones that decide to do something and just stick at it and really grind and get like the little details done. Right? A mediocre idea that somebody really works hard on is going to do really, really well compared to an amazing idea that somebody just does the minimum on. Yeah. That's what it boils down to in this. So just grind on it. It's your site. It's your baby. It's the thing that's making you money. I would protect it as much as I can. I do as much as I can to make sure that I'm going to, survive and continue this wild ride. And I don't think these things are that hard to do. And so that's why I would do them.
Very good. Awesome. I think we covered everything that we wanted to. Any final thoughts on EAT before we talk about what's coming up for you?
No, no, no. That I think we got it. We got it. We nailed it.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, what's coming up for you? Do you have any conferences or speaking engagements in the next, whatever, 6 months or something like that? What's going on with you?
Yeah, I've got Manila next month. It's the 22nd and 23rd, I think, SEO movement. And then I've got SEO vibes in Budapest. I recommend. Um, that's with White Press, by the way. White Press for all your linking needs. I think I get a little. Actually, in all seriousness, they're a really good platform. In all seriousness, they're a really good platform. And then, but by the way, though, I just had my own first conference that I put on. It was last month in Estonia, and we're doing it again next June. So clear your calendars.
Okay.
Come on to
Cool.
Estonia.
I didn't know that. That was yours. Maybe I did know that. Awesome. How did it go?
It was a wild success. It was honestly one of the best conferences I've been to. I know I'm a little biased, but it was great. It was really great.
I've heard good things. Okay, so that's June next year. All right.
Sydney in March. James Norquay with Prosperity Media, and I think it's just SEO Sydney, I think is what they call it. But I went last year, and that was a lot of fun. That was a good conference too.
Right on. Very cool. Well, you're always around, so people should find you at one of those conferences and say hello. And as we wrap up, so we mentioned Internet Marketing Gold before. You have a couple pretty popular courses in there. You just want to mention what they are really quick. You don't have to sell them or anything. It's totally fine. But if you want to mention them,
we were talking about this earlier. I don't really know how to sell myself very well. I don't think I'm good at marketing. The two courses that people like the most are my on-page SEO course and my wide hat SEO course. Those are the two most popular ones. I think we're on like version 3 of the on-page course, and I'm realizing the version 4 needs to come out soon. So we'll get working on that as well. But those are the two big courses that people like.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll link up specifically. And I was going to mention that's exactly like you guys. You don't do the course and leave it. There's iterations. You guys are on top of it with all the testing that you're doing, so you're able to update it and have facts and tests to back up what you're changing. So highly recommended. Awesome. So we'll link up to all that stuff. And where should people find you, Kyle?
The easiest thing is kyleroof.com. All my stuff is there. So yeah, you can easy links to everything from there.
All right. Perfect. Thanks a lot, man. And we'll catch up soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.